Sage Steele, are you in a car calling in?
Without audio. You're
Sometimes
muted.
she won't even have audio. That's one of the things we're doing with the show. Sometimes we'll have people calling in a car without audio. All right,
There
Sage
you
is
are.
gonna. Are you there, Sage? Are you there?
Nope.
She's not there. All right, so we are going to figure it out. Drew, before we do anything else, thanks for jumping in today, as always.
Of course. Actual friends. I love spending time with actual friends. I mean, this is so fun for me.
Well, this was the whole point of the show, is that we're all just kind of, there's this big mix of people. We're all part of it, and we're doing a million things. And once a week, could we try to get together and like make us all feel better about the craziness? That was the idea. But you have a new show before we do anything. You have a new show on Lifetime. Now, I thought that Lifetime was just 24 hours of Golden Girls every day, and God bless them. Love it. But Health Uncensored with Dr. Drew. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's actually a good show. We do a lot of medical breakthroughs. I talked to Jay Bhattacharya. I talked to Dr. Oz. We do good interviews. It's in a terrible time slot, so set your recorders. It's 8 a.m. Eastern time, 7 Central on Lifetime. I met with the president of A&E last week. I was like, can we get a better time for this thing? They're like, we're not in the nonfiction business. I thought, all right, well, I love them anyway. So take a look. It's a good show, and it's a little engine that could. It's good. Just keeps going, and I'm sure we'll have other places for it.
Yeah, and to get the show full circle before we even get there, we're going to end today having to do with Google censorship, particularly as it pertained to COVID. And you were really one of the front end people on exposing a lot of that. You were censored yourself, as was I, and many, many others.
And let me say, David, I got to interrupt you. We yesterday, just after the day after they made the announcement, yesterday, we went from an average of like 1,500 Google viewers to like 40,000. So thank you, Google. Thank you for releasing us. It happened like that.
You know, it's so interesting because for those of us that are in this game, I don't like talking about the censorship stuff or when you kind of know you're manipulated or depressed or whatever, because it sort of feels like sour grapes and nobody wants to hear about it and that kind of thing. But then you see these weird moments where they kind of admit something and then you see an explosion in your numbers and you're like,
and not only that, Dave, but I was talking to Naomi Wolf about vaccines. We discussed ivermectin. I mean, all the things that would literally get me kicked off Google 6 months ago.
And the most interesting thing is I bring up almost every time I talk to you on your show, my show, this show, whatever, is that your evolution as it pertains to some of this, where you were a little more trusting of some of these guys and you come from a bit of the institutional health world. So your evolution, I think, is something that really has it hits people in a different way because it's not like you were just some guy that was out of the mainstream that started saying these things. You actually came from that machine. Does Sage Steele have audio? Let's see if Sage Steele, you're going to have to speak.
She does.
Oh, pretty good. Actual friends now with audio and video. Hello, Sage. What's going on?
Hi, friends. I think we're somewhere in Mississippi. I'm not sure. We flew in from Texas today. Don't laugh, Dr. Drew, but I know you know me well enough now that this should not shock you. We're heading down to see my daughter, big LSU Ole Miss game this weekend. I don't know if she wants us to come, but we're coming. We're driving.
Well done.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can.
About that.
No, that's all right. We're going to see if that's the whole point. So we're going to see if we can keep that internet going for a few minutes at least, Sage. But let's just dive right in because obviously the big story that's going to remain the story for the remainder of the year is the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk. Sage and I went to the memorial together in Phoenix. We took what should have been about a 7-minute car ride from our hotel. Took us about 2.5, maybe 3 hours to get there. It was unbelievable. The guy who was driving us, professional driver in the Phoenix area, he said he's done 3 Super Bowls there. He said this was bigger and crazier than any of the ones that he had seen. There were literally people walking down the highway holding babies, just getting out of their car to just walk there. I mean, it was absolutely extraordinary. I want to read something that I put up on Twitter on this, and then we'll let you guys chime in. The atmosphere in this stadium is almost indescribable. The Democrats have purged the moderate liberals, and they are now all welcome in the wide tent that Charlie helped create. This is the positive future for the country that all who love America can be part of. You know, Sage, when I put that up, I put up a few things also that were completely apolitical about the spiritual side of being there and everything else. But because I'm a political animal, that was the part that really sat with me, that Charlie represented. I'm really coming around to this more and more, he represented the best of what America is. He really did. He was trying to hold something together that in most countries cannot be held together, a wide coalition of all sorts of different people. And it was just unbelievably moving being there, right? Like people got to see it on TV, but to be in that room with 100,000 people, I will never forget it.
Yeah, I was so glad that I got to sit there next to you and Phoenix and my husband and experience all of it, all 5 hours of it. And that was only after we got inside those doors. I thought it was a fascinating mix of politics and spirituality. It depends on the speaker, of course. Um, it was fascinating to see the difference between Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. Fascinating to see the difference between Stephen Miller and Tulsi Gabbard, JD Vance. For me, it was a great balance. The spirituality part is for me what absolutely stood out the most. And I'd love to see what Dr. Drew's take is on that from home. I will say this as well. Um, real quick, just to wrap up, Dave, about when we were driving into the stadium. Dave said it, 2.5 hours, not a single horn honking, no riots, no ugliness. There was such kindness and beauty despite people mourning while getting ready to celebrate this man's life. It was an unforgettable experience. And I personally took more of the spirituality part from it, to see 100,000 people with their hands in the air. It was, I don't know that we'll ever see anything like that again. And also, I think it's important for us to stay angry, kind of like after 9/11. And the question now is, what do we do next with this?
And then Erica Kirk took it all the way. I know I'm speaking to a sports announcer, all the way to the end zone with her forgiveness and her walking the walk, so to speak. And by the way, what poise! This is a serious person where you haven't heard the last of yet. Thank goodness. But in reality, I that day was sort of a high for me. And I thought, oh, we're going to get together. We're going to get over this. We're going to get better. 2 days later was my bottom. When I listened to a lot of French media, and on French radio, all of a sudden, no, French television, a group of reporters going, well, this was a 1939 Nazi gathering. And I was like, what? What? And then I started getting texts from family members in a panic that Christian nationalists were taking over the country. I was like, oh my God. How do you get people to look at the same thing and see the same thing? It is astonishing. Only thing I can say is just keep walking the walk. Let Erica Kirk be your model, and hopefully people will be persuaded.
Let me ask you guys something, and I'll connect this to the ICE shooting that just happened in Dallas, which is that, Sage, you're mentioning the spiritual part, and Drew, you mentioned the Erica forgiveness part, forgiving the shooter. It was one of the most incredible things I have ever heard in my entire life. And the feeling in that room, there simply are not words to describe it when that moment happened. And most human beings could not do that. Even believers could not do what she did right there.
Correct.
One of the things I'm kind of worried about right now is that while most of us, let's say, are in this sort of healing mode, we're in the grieving mode still, there definitely is an angry component here. And there should be. There's something called righteous anger, and there should be. But I am definitely afraid, if we get a couple more of these shootings, or if, God forbid, there's another assassination or something else with an ICE thing, or just something else, that the grieving thing is going to switch into something very angry very quickly. And I don't know how we, as people that want to keep things under control or just decent, I don't know what our job is within that. I mean, other than to tell people the truth, of course. But Sage, are you worried about that? That what is right now kind of decent, it could turn really nasty?
Yeah, I think if we aren't concerned about that, and copycats, frankly, because we've seen it on every level whenever there's a tragic shooting, frankly, then we're not smart to at least not have that in the back of my mind. Again, I think prayer for me matters for millions of people around the world. I have never felt, you guys are out all the time, I have never felt anything like I have in the last, certainly since Sunday, but in the last 2 weeks since Charlie Kirk was murdered. People are coming up nonstop saying how angry they are, but we must remain above it all and do what Charlie would do, which was, no matter what, kept the open microphone, welcomed anyone up, even if they had hateful rhetoric, but to not go there, stay calm, and practice what we preach and lead with kindness. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. We pray nothing else happens. But at this point, we can't be surprised if it does. How are we going to handle that? We cannot go to that level and do what they do, frankly, riot, burn down buildings, loot, etc. We've got to be prepared and pray along the way, in my opinion.
And I think having a really clear rhetorical stance, and they crystallized for me this morning a bit. Scott Adams was talking about how Trump called Kamala Harris a Dumbo because of her interview on The View or something. And he goes, he's calling her an idiot. See how different that insulting, calling somebody idiot, that they're calling inciting violence, is different than a fascist, authoritarian Hitler has taken over your government. If I believed what Gavin Newsom was saying,
yes,
I would go to Sacramento and try to figure out how we get a militia or how we get the army involved to take back the country. That's what he's talking about. And you need to come down on that hard. You need to push back on that, because he's literally, if think about how you would feel if he was talking about something that literally happened to your government. You would start organizing. That's what you would do. That can't happen.
You're so right. You know, I played that clip this morning of Newsom on Colbert from 2 nights ago, and he basically says that Trump's going to cancel the election.
Raising money, but also raising awareness around how Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections, and how I fear that we will not have an election in 2028. I really mean that in the core of my soul, unless we wake up to the code red, what's happening in this country, and we wake up soberly to how serious this moment is.
That there will not be an election in 2028. And it's like, man, did you not just pay attention to what just happened here? Unless it truly is baked into the code, and I think it is, that they want people in this perpetual state. And also, Scott's point, it's funny, I said almost the exact same thing on my show this morning. It's a fundamental difference. Calling someone Hitler, well, people might try to stop Hitler. Calling someone an idiot,
wouldn't you? I would admit, I go, Dave, I'd call you on the phone. I go, all right, we got to form a militia. We got to start there. Let's go. And that's what a patriot would do. So they've got to, and there's a lot of cussing going on these days too, on really frankly both sides. I don't know if I can do it on this show or not.
Go ahead.
They have to fucking stop. They have to fucking stop. That's it. Period.
But all right, so just to wrap up this portion, I mean, Sage, do you think there's any chance that they will? Like, I'm with you that more and more people are waking up, but the forces that be, let's say, on mainstream media and the corporate press and on social media, the thing that we're talking about, is there any evidence that the Democrat Party at large, is there just any evidence that they will stop? I don't see any.
I unfortunately, I don't. You know, I'm a glass half full person, but unfortunately I don't. And I think when you just look back to the coverage on Sunday, when we were all in Phoenix and the world, hundreds of millions of people were watching this. What did Jasmine Crockett do? You know, and she went on and was so extremely hateful, and it was just so unnecessary. Just read the room and maybe wait till Monday to be as hateful about your opinions on Charlie Kirk. So I think that's also what happens when there's fear. And that's what's happened in general to me with the left, and even including the young man who we believe took Charlie Kirk's life. I mean, when they feel that they are losing, not all of them, but obviously there's a very large group of extremists right now, then this is the extent that they will go. I agree, Dr. Drew, though, both sides. And I usually don't feel like we are as bad at that as the left is. But I do, even J.D. Vance this week, I forgot who he was referring to as a dipshit. We're used to it from President Trump. I said this last night. I was speaking at Heritage Foundation in Dallas, and I'll say it now. The one thing I take from Michelle Obama: when they go low, we go high. I think we need to practice that so much more now, because they are exposing themselves in the worst possible ways. And we don't need to. Trump, we've always had a problem with his language. It's like, oh my gosh, you almost had it, President Trump, and you had to say that. And it takes the great message away unnecessarily.
Okay, you're right. I'm persuaded. I'm done. No more cussing for me. Yeah. I'm going to take a Sage Steele every time I get the impulse. I swear to God, I'm going to stop.
But to slightly counter the Michelle Obama thing, I mean, she said when they go low, we go high, but I don't think that's the way they behaved. But yes, Sage's broader point, could we all have our better angels on as much as possible right now? I think we all agree with that.
We are not enemies. We are friends.
Unfortunately, some people don't seem to want to be on that ride with us. And of course, there was this shooting now at the Dallas ICE facility. Here's Ted Cruz on that.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric, demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree. That's fine. That's the democratic process. But your political opponents are not Nazis. We need to learn to work together without demonizing each other, without attacking each other. And I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of law enforcement. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of ICE and CBP and everyone who puts their lives on the line to keep us safe.
Well, of course, that hits the right tone and everything else. As it relates to Gavin Newsom, we mentioned a moment ago, he was on that Colbert appearance. He also said, if you're black and brown, you should fear ICE. They're just grabbing people and everything. We all know the rhetoric. We all know the rhetoric at this point. Sage, I just don't see them turning around. I know you're the half. I'm also half full usually. My glass is half full. I just do not see them turning around. How can you do it? How, in good conscience, all of these people who've said that ICE is Nazis and they're doing all these horrible things, how could you suddenly be like, you know what, I was wrong about that? It's the same reason that years ago I kept saying, you guys got to stop calling Trump Hitler, because it's not what you're doing to him, it's what you're doing to yourself. It might turn out that he's not Hitler, but it's pretty hard to be like, you know, that Hitler guy was kind of...
The Hitler guy's pretty good after all.
Yeah, I dropped the ball on that one. Sage.
Yeah, I sometimes I feel like I contradict myself because I'm like, no, we can do this and we can be positive.
But that's why we do this show, because we're working it out in real time. That's the point.
I know, honestly. I think that they have been very successful with their messaging, unfortunately. And as we saw in Dallas this week, it has gone to levels that honestly, any of us never thought that we would get to this point. And especially with the youth, because it isn't just recently. I mean, this is just one of the latest examples, because this has been going on. I mean, I go back honestly to that COVID year in 2020 when so much of the country was completely shut down and all these kids had was their phones and their tablets, and TikTok and these platforms did a beautiful job. They took full advantage and completely indoctrinated these children. And that is also the only news source. I mean, Dave, I've talked to you about my kids and the text messages I got from them, even after Charlie Kirk. I mean, the news is coming from TikTok. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's discuss this and let's show you another place to get it. But if that's all they're receiving, then we absolutely are in trouble, because that is as malicious and dark and evil as it gets, and we're seeing it unfortunately now play out in real life. So what are we going to call that, Dr. Drew?
I talked to a Rasmussen pollster yesterday, and he said right now the biggest radicalizing influence is not the traditional social media platforms, it's Reddit. And there is concern that the deeper Reddits are actually being manipulated by overseas influence. So it's profound. And it's unregulated, and we don't know it's happening, and it is bad.
And the problem with that is, so let's say that's true, and I've been talking about Reddit for years because they hijacked my page and started doxing me, literally put my address up and all this crazy stuff. And I contacted Reddit, and they would not do anything about it, even though there were legal issues there. So I'm on board that. But then the problem, the real issue is then what is the solution? So the government should come in and take care of Reddit? I'm not sure that's the solution. And then these bots, like, we know, we're all on Twitter. You tweet something out and you get 50 responses within 30 seconds that make no sense. Like no one could have thought of these things that quickly.
Right.
And so we're just all in a game that we just don't know what the rules are. And I think that's also part of the confusion here.
I think the government has to turn its attention to the real enemies. They've got to unravel it. And I think they're doing it. I think they are.
When you say real enemies, because I have a large group of enemies.
When you really get down to it, you find CCP under a lot of it. Even if it's through Russia, or Ukraine, it's still CCP. And we have to. They have agents. They have people doing this stuff. We have to unravel all of that.
And by the way, some of it's on our shores too, because we know with these radical NGOs and where they're getting their money from, a lot of their money is also coming from China, and then they're pumping it into NGOs here that coordinate with, all of these other nonprofits to get kids out on streets and everything else. But all right, I'll leave my portion there because we're a little time sensitive today. Sage, what can you do from a car? Where do you want to take us, metaphorically?
Well, we pulled over. Thank you, Dave. Wait, Dave, say hi to Dave and Dr. Drew, your friends.
How are you, man? Good to see you.
How you doing, Dave? Husband and professional driver, Dave.
Yes, the multi-talented Dave Barbuto. What we mentioned the word enemies a moment ago. I do consider Keith Olbermann one of my enemies. He, unfortunately, I used to think of him as not a true friend, but certainly a coworker that I was proud to work alongside just a couple of times in his third stint at ESPN. And of course, now he's been fired from ESPN 3 different times, MSNBC, Fox Sports, you name it. He's very, very good at getting fired. But he crossed the line, I'd say, this week, and even ways that were surprising for Keith Olbermann. A long time ago, I muted one of my former coworkers at ESPN on social media because I don't waste my time and energy anymore on hateful people. But the psychosis of Keith Olbermann has officially reached another level. Remember, this man was fired from ESPN 3 times, fired from MSNBC, fired from Fox Sports, fired from a couple of places. Last week, after Sinclair removed Jimmy Kimmel's show from the ABC affiliates for his comments about Charlie Kirk, did you see what Keith tweeted? Burn in hell, Sinclair, alongside Charlie Kirk. I have no words for that. Yesterday, Keith attacked CNN analyst Scott Jennings because of his conservative views, and he said, "You're next." I'm wondering, was he referring to Scott getting kicked off the air as well, like hoping he would? Or was he referring to something worse, like what happened to Charlie? Okay. I don't know. And I don't necessarily care, of course, because I think he's insane. And I don't think he's one of the ones that will go to another level. My question for you is, and maybe Dr. Drew, you'd like to start, what is that line? He gave the apology. I'd love to know who told him to do it. I don't know if I believe how genuine it is from Keith Olbermann with anything, but he did it. My question is, what is that line? I am all for free speech. He has attacked me endlessly for years. Go for it. But when he says, burn in hell, are we okay with that? When he says, you're next, Scott Jennings, could have been interpreted, as I said, a couple of different ways. Is it as simple as you're going to be pulled off the air, or is it worse? What is that line?
Unfortunately, I'm a pure free speech literalist. I think when the thought occurs to you to refer matters to the FBI, that's the line. And I literally, the words that came out of my mouth, I said, look at this. This has to go to the FBI. He's threatening to kill somebody. I can't read his mind, but this is a threat to kill, an overt threat of violence. You're next. That is crossed over. The burn in hell, can't do much with that. But you're next. That is going to the FBI. And I still think, and by the way, he clearly showed consciousness of guilt, took it down immediately not because he didn't feel that way, but because of liability, certainly.
Yeah, so I'm completely with Drew on the First Amendment portion of this, right? You can say to somebody, burn in hell. You can say you're an effing a-hole. You can say all of those things. It's the direct call to violence. And by the way, what he did there was sort of an interesting whittling of how you use words. It's sort of like when they chant from the river to the sea. Well, it's not a call for genocide, except it is if you understand what the river and the sea is. So to say you're next, okay, well, it's not really saying, is it you're next to be killed or you're next to be fired? Now, look, do we want Keith Olbermann to be put in jail over that? Probably not. Like, does that really solve anything? And did he really mean you're next? Well, you're next in the in the most threatening sense. I actually think with someone like Keith, it is possible because he has so over the years proven himself.
What happened to him? Is he got a cysticercosis like RFK had? What's going on?
He has just so consistently proven himself to be completely bananas. So I think the best thing that people like us could do is largely ignore him. But Sage, I certainly, and as a former colleague of his, I get the inclination. It's like, you just can't let some of these go. We all have that. Like sometimes you're just like, oh, I want to forget about this person. And by the way, it's funny. I think you just said you have him muted. I muted him too years ago. He kept calling me a Nazi and I just muted him. But then every now and again, they do something so over the line. But I would just connect this to one other thing, which is that one of the things I'm really coming around to in the last 2 weeks post Charlie is that, let's say there's like 300 of us in America that are somewhat influential in this space, something like that, right? What I'm really realizing is the buckets that we fill are very, very different. So I would include you guys in the bucket of people that are genuinely good faith actors that are trying to figure out what's right here, that you have your opinions, you don't lie about them. Yes, do we all want clicks? Do we all want to make a living? Blah, blah, blah. But like there's good faith people. Then there's just like, there's a certain set of people that are genuinely crazy. I would put Olbermann in that. Then there are just like kind of the click whores. Then there are people who are just like real ideologues who want to just lie to people to get them to their position. And I think people need to start thinking about it a little more in those terms. I know it's easy for me to say, oh, yes, I happen to be here with the good guys, but I know we're at least all trying. And there's some people, Olbermann is not trying. He is not trying. And I think that has probably more to do with psychological reasons than, in his case, maybe ideological reasons.
What I noticed with him was the sheer anger. Certainly towards the end of his third and final run at ESPN, but also when you've just watched the evolution of his videos from the balcony overlooking Central Park is usually what it is, and there's pure anger, and it actually is scary. Can I tell you a quick Keith Olbermann story, and then we'll move on because you guys will love this, I think. The last time I worked with him, I was hosting, my full-time job was co-host of the 6 p.m. Eastern Sports Center, and my co-host that day was out. And so they said, hey, we want Keith to fill in, but can you go to New York to do the show, to the New York studios? And I said, well, we're in Bristol, Connecticut. These are the Bristol studios. They're like, yeah, but Keith, he's a little uncomfortable coming here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He basically lived here. He goes, he doesn't have anybody to babysit his dogs. So can you go to New York because he's just uncomfortable? And I'm like, he's the fill-in.
Yeah.
And you want to go to New York because of his dog. And actually I was like, sure, I'll get a nice meal on the company. I'll go do it. I could use a night. But I thought, oh my goodness. Yeah. Like I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying there's a lot of things with this man. And it's sad because
where's Dan Patrick to watch the dogs when you need him,
But listen, guys, I think I mentioned this last time I was in the show, but there's a lesson to be learned here. I've been worrying about myself lately because I look at some of the things Trump says, and I look at Jasmine Crockett too, and I am endlessly entertained by these people. I find Trump appealing. I find Jasmine appealing. Wouldn't vote for Jasmine necessarily. Didn't vote for Trump a lot of the time. I don't think I ever voted for Trump. Now I think about it, but it's what these people trigger in us tells you things diagnostically about the people who are big trigger. Yeah. I interviewed a world famous expert in narcissist, and he said there's no more powerful way to trigger a narcissist than with another narcissist. They just trigger each other. So if you see people getting severely triggered by Trump, diagnosis in mind. Not that Trump isn't a narcissist, fine, but he's triggering other narcissists out there in ways that are just dangerous. I think that's what happened to Kimmel. I think that's what happened to him too. It's happening to a lot of people, and you got to just examine yourself. I worry that I'm so entertained by all of it. I should maybe think more seriously about some of the insults and things that this is something about my codependency. But read yourself, everybody. Read your own reactions.
Right. I guess that's the point, right? Because it's an interesting lesson for all of us. Like we all see terrible things online all day. And sometimes you know the person and sometimes you know that they're doing it for the clicks or whatever. But like it tells you more about you what your reaction is than in some sense them. So Drew, why don't we kick it to you for the remainder?
So let's talk about Tylenol. Let me straighten this all out for you. First, let's put up that tweet from Tylenol from 2017, which was a warning not to take Tylenol during pregnancy. I would simply say that what the HHS in their press conference reminded us is pregnant women should not be taking anything. That is simply true. It has been my position my entire career. Pregnant women should not take pharmaceutical substances. There was a very strong signal. I heard a guy from Harvard talking about it yesterday. The signal was, quote, very strong that there may be some neurodevelopmental problems associated with intrauterine development if you're exposed to Tylenol during pregnancy. That does not mean that people are going to take away your Tylenol and that you should be, if you don't, it's seeing pregnant women take Tylenol just because Trump pisses me off. That should be against the law, frankly. It's harming your baby because Trump pisses you off.
I've been so fascinated with this topic and these videos, clips of these psycho pregnant women popping pills. Like, why?
No one is taking away your Tylenol. And guess what? If you get a very high fever, which is also neurodevelopmentally threatening to your developing fetus, your obstetrician is going to tell you to, guess what? Take Tylenol. Because in that situation, the risk reward is worth it. I find myself speaking in media almost every day about risk reward, everybody, risk reward. There's a really interesting sort of wrinkle in this story, which is the American College of Physicians in their rheumatology board review last go round made a recommendation that there be only one medication that be considered to be taken during pregnancy for people that are on it for their lupus, that it be maintained during pregnancy. That medication, only one, hydroxychloroquine, because it's so inert and so benign, and you can just take it safely during pregnancy. That's an insane reality. Tylenol, more dangerous. Also a reminder that one of the most serious ways to commit suicide is Tylenol overdose, and you need only take 15 pills or maybe even 12, and you will be dead in 3 days, and there is nothing other than a liver transplant we can do about that. It causes massive hepatic necrosis fast. I worked in a psych hospital for many years. I had to deal with this. I swear to God, I had a guy get liver failure after 8 Tylenol tablets. And it depends on your own enzymatic machinery in your liver. It can more easily go a bad direction. And guess what? Pregnancy is one of those things that can make it more easily toxic.
Well, I'm sure Sage and I both have a million questions. They're probably all the same questions. But when you saw that tweet, so the tweet you just showed, I think was from 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes.
So clearly Tylenol was acknowledging something then. Now, this is the first I've heard of it. This is obviously not my field of expertise. But when you saw that tweet be resurfaced, were you basically like, duh? And why has nobody at the FDA or now that you've sort of been red-pilled on a lot of our institutional health issues, does this not surprise you that we didn't know about this?
I think it's a symptom. Look, pregnant women should take nothing. This is a reminder of that. Nothing, period. Tylenol, unless you have a very high fever and your obstetrician tells you, then it's worth the risk reward, maybe. But I think it's a sign of what happened at our HHS and CDC was where they became a centralized authority and starting telling people how to practice medicine and what to do, as opposed to an advisory agency, which is what you saw in full display during that practice conference. You had 3 clinicians up there going, there's a strong signal. We're not telling you what to do, but we need you to be aware of the signal. Talk to your doctor. That's the CDC. That is a renewal of its original intent.
My goodness. And then what did we see? The ladies of the left, I mean, going crazy, these viral videos, Dr. Drew, even before this incredible explanation, to thank you for this education here on it. I thought, well, this is not a good thing. Why are these women on camera, bellies showing, laughing as they pop pills into their body? You talk about mental health issues that we mentioned with Berman. That's what this is.
That is, to me, that is, I worry about that person as a mother. That person will attack a fetus because of their political outrage about something that a president said. And by all he said was, hey, these guys are being doctors. They're walking a certain line here, but I can say it. Don't do it. Why would you do it? Just common sense. Why would you do it? He's right. He's correct. That's just true. But I mean, listen, I had a family member call me about Tylenol. I said, look, it was about a child taking Tylenol. And I said, look, there's a 0 chance of teething harming the child. There's a non-zero chance of Tylenol harming the child. Decide accordingly. And back to what you're talking about with these women, I worry, okay, I don't know this to be true, but I worry our casualness with which we approach a very solemn topic like abortion may be fueling this idea that I can do whatever I want to my body, even if it's to make a political statement when it's going to harm a fetus. That is I worry like hell about that.
It actually makes sense. It actually, you can easily connect those dots. And My Body, My Choice, My Baby, My Choice. I mean, the way that they did it with Glee, it broke my heart.
You know, it's also interesting how much things have changed in a couple of years as it pertains to these institutions, because, you know, I'm watching Trump up there and he's got Bobby Kennedy, who literally was running as a Democrat 2 years ago. You've got Jay Bhattacharya, who, Drew, I know you guys have been on my show together a million times, and I always credit him for being one of the first ones that kept me calm about COVID the entire way through. Literally, you know, two or 3 weeks in, he's one of the main reasons I didn't go crazy on it. You know, we've got some of these other people like Dr. Oz, who I think you guys both know personally, who's just an extraordinary human being. Marty McCary, like these are good people. So I don't know that they have the answers on all of these things, but it gets to your point, Drew. They're now at least trying to advise us to think and hopefully talk to your doctor. And then I guess at the end of the day, the hope is that your doctor is not just going to repeat what he's being told either. And I guess that probably is what the real challenge is.
Yes. And I would have pushed back so hard on you 6 years ago if you said that to me. When my peers, we're objective, we think about things. The behavior I saw during COVID was so shocking. Naomi Wolf raised this with me yesterday on my Ask Dr. Drew show that I do a streaming show. And she was like, I don't trust doctors anymore. I was like, okay, you're right. But I hope we move back in the direction of careful thought and caretaking in making a decision on behalf of the patient, with the patient taking all risk reward into consideration and not just allowing anything else to enter into that equation.
I remember being in that studio with you a couple of months ago, and that was one of my questions, was how do we restore the trust overall? And yes, doctors and the medical system and the HHS and CDC and everybody, because once 2020 came around and how it was handled, you lost me.
Me too.
And
I was shocked.
I know that I'm doing the right things because now I'm like, well, which doctor, I've moved to Florida, which doctor do I go see? And that's not good either.
Well, I think there's an interesting sort of symptom, or what should I look for? A phenomenon that you should look for, which is the doctor should be putting as much as possible into your hands and then helping you make that decision. If the doctor is telling you what to do from on high, unless you ask him or her to do that, be careful.
Drew, let me ask you one other thing, and then we are tight on time here, but maybe this is an interesting way to end the show. My sense is that we're going to see a real divide basically between people that are going to go for functional medicine, meaning really try to figure out what the root of these things are. And then there's just going to be the bulk of people who are, regardless of what, even if our institutions get a little bit better or not, there's always going to be just like the machine of people that will just take medicine for everything. They'll never deal with the root cause. I'm seeing that in my own life right now. I'm seeing a lot more people who are aware of this stuff doing way more on the functional medicine side, like not take a medicine just because you have this symptom, but actually why do I have this issue? Let's really get to that. But obviously it's more expensive at the moment. It's going to change, you have to change habits more. It's not just taking a pill, but I see that as a big divide health-wise going forward. I
have to preach for a second. So let's bear with me here.
Yeah.
In this country, we have lost track of the fact that all pharmacology, this Tylenol story is a reminder of this, all pharmacology is potentially dangerous. It's only when the risk reward is worth it that you take a medication. And the primary reason people take medication is because of disabling or fatal illness. That's when the risk reward is worth it. All medicine is dangerous. We have adopted a position that medicines are going to make us flourish, make life better. That's insane. I was raised by an old family practitioner, never let me take anything. When I was 15, I took my first antibiotic, and I remember what he was doing. He's just like, all right, your pediatrician wants to do this. It's a terrible idea, but all right, I'll do it. 15, no medicine, zero until then. And I have adopted a similar attitude throughout my practice. Now, that's one issue. The other issue, people are getting very confused about wellness and medical illness. We all, and before us, probably family members, elderly family members, will get sick. We will have disease. No matter how much you work on functional medicine and wellness, which is all worthwhile, you will still get disease. You will still get aging. That will happen. And when you come to somebody like me, I will use pharmacology, and thank God I have that. And there's research being done that could not be funded by anybody except pharmaceutical companies. It's too expensive. But I have things at my disposal to deal with your disabling or potentially fatal illness. And that's what I do. So don't run to the doctors for everything. Work on your wellness, but don't get sideways that wellness is going to obviate all medical illness. We are biological and we will get sick, and it's okay. And we will die too. And we have not had the death with dignity conversation yet. Only that Rhode Island senator during RFK's presentation a couple weeks ago, that Rhode Island senator said, we're spending all of our healthcare dollars in the last 2 months of life. That guy knows what he's talking about. We should have that conversation too.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, you can see why he's the official doctor of Actual Friends. Drew, Sage, it's therapy. This is my therapy for the week. I kid you not. Thank you, guys.
Me too. Thank you, guys.